people say, oh, you're the experts. And I tell them that is the worst curse you can tell me, is that I'm an expert. I don't want to be an expert because I want to know that I don't know. Don't curse me with that title. I'm not an expert. I'm just progressing. I'm learning. I'm getting better at whatever this is. Maybe I'm a little bit further than someone else, but I'm still not an expert at it, you know? So the idea is once you place that expert title on yourself or someone else, then that kind of implies that that's it. That's all there is to know about it, whatever it is that you're an expert in. Okay, Dad, do you have a minute?
Hello, I do.
Cool. I was asked if we could speak about experts.
Asked?
Yes, my husband a couple of months ago probably asked if we could talk about experts and what
Approach
makes
the idea
somebody
of experts?
An expert. He works in a field where there are expert witnesses that he gets to deal with, but I don't think that's what he was talking about. I think he was talking about like the commentators that discuss sports that are apparent experts and why anybody would consider them an authority on what they were saying, you know?
We talked in past about color commentators. What was that about?
I'm not sure. It's pretty recent, right? The Noticer? No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Color.
idioms.
It adds color.
It was it was
idioms. Idioms add color. So
right.
Maybe idioms, you have to be an expert to use an idiom, perhaps. You have to know what it means.
You have to know what it means. An expert in idioms.
Or in that subject, in the way you're using it.
Right. First, I want to see, like, is there a difference between experts and authorities? Like, what might a difference be between those two titles of someone?
Authority. An authority, is that someone that is, did they choose themselves to be in that place? I wonder, at appointment is what I'm thinking about. Were they appointed to the authority position? And are you appointed to an expert position?
I wonder if you could bestow the title of expert onto yourself based on what you think you know about something. Or you could you call yourself an authority on a matter?
The foremost authority, foremost expert. I think, are they synonymous? We're trying to determine if expert and authority are interchangeable.
There's some results that come up on a Google search for the difference between authority and expert. This one, the little blurb says, it's from Rob Llewellyn. I don't know how to say that last name, but it's a Welsh name, right? And I think
I don't know.
If it was Welsh, the double L's would say TH instead. So Rob Thuthen. I don't know.
Is that what it is?
I'm not an
Instead
expert.
Instead of Spanish, the double L is Y.
No, yeah, in Spanish it's Y.
In Welsh, it's a TH. Huh.
Yeah.
You're not an expert or an authority on that.
I know. I've tried though, because I read a book series, The Chronicles of Prydain, and that's kind of a Welsh area-based book series where he used a lot of character names from Welsh roots, and so I know a little bit is what I'm saying.
Okay. So what did he say?
This guy on this website, his article is called Become an Authority, and it says the difference between experts and authorities are experts have a lot of knowledge and experience in a specific field, while authorities are experts with an audience.
An authority has someone to talk to.
Yeah, they have influence and reach and credibility. It's a little bit more of a social stance than just an expert.
It's an idea there. I recently went through another thing. It talks about emotions and affection. So your emotions are what you feel. Your affections are who you feel it for. So maybe the difference between an expert and it just kind of matches a little bit. That's why I brought that up. An expert has emotions, has an understanding of an emotion, a passion for a subject, and an authority has someone he can operate with that passion with, an audience. to actually talk to.
Yeah. Okay. So like if somebody was really good at taking apart vacuums and then cleaning them and putting them back together, like you're an expert at that if you just do it on your own at your house. But I recently had the amazing opportunity to view someone doing that while following along with my own vacuum. I took my vacuum completely apart and put it back together with the assistance of this guy on YouTube. And so he would be an authority then. I'm placing authority in him then because I'm a viewer.
You appointed the authority to him because you paid attention. The audience then can identify the authority.
Okay, yeah. That seems to make sense. Because you don't have any authority if no one's paying attention to you, right?
Yeah, you can be a self-proclaimed expert, but you can't be an authority unless someone else claims that you're the authority and authority in this. That's a slight definitional difference, but I think it's important.
I think it is important to understand. So when we talk about specific experts further on in our conversation, we'll be able to identify whether it's an expert or a figure with authority because they're an expert, but because they have an audience.
The other word that I thought of is professional, is an expert a professional. So we need to compare that with expert as well. Just in synonyms of expert, professional is one of the words. Also, authority is one of the words. An authority is someone who apparently the audience can select, whoever's listening, whoever the audience is, selects and elects them as an authority in that expert status. A professional is someone who practices something. So they are actively practicing it and working on it or working in that profession. I think that's the definition of a professional, is they're practicing that profession.
Yeah, and often that's shortened to pro. If someone's a pro at something, that means they're professional at something.
And that's something based on the amount of study, I guess, or the amount of attention you give it. We talk about your passion for it. You may have a passion for it and you just love to understand it. But if you can give it more attention, then it becomes a profession.
When you get to that pro level, the professional level, you don't just stop. You're like, I'm a pro now. I'm not going to work anymore at this. Like, you have to continue, right?
And you probably continue to learn as well. I mean, you're always open to new ideas or to connections that you haven't made before, you haven't made yet. I would bet that every professional who is expert at his craft is newer every year. So is also more expert next year than he was last year.
That kind of brings me to an article about, I found this on Forbes.com, published a couple of years ago, why being an expert is dangerous and how to fix it. We're going to talk about why it's dangerous, though. The idea is that the more expert we are, the more entrenched in our own mental models when faced with facts that contradict them. Like the more we become entrenched in our own mental models when faced with facts that contradict them. So you consider yourself an expert, and then you think, I don't need to think anymore. I'm done learning, about this. I'm done. I've reached the expert status, and that is all that I need to do, right?
Yeah, and that person, that's a self-proclaimed expert, but that person would likely have no audience.
Yeah, not an authority.
Wouldn't be an authority. And the way I describe professional, it wouldn't be a professional either. It'd be an expert, that he knows what he knows, and that's the truth. There's no other truth outside of what I know.
Yeah, the example that this article gives is Albert Einstein, who was an authority and an expert. Like, he was an expert and an authority.
And a professional.
And a professional. It says...
Why would they give him why would they use him?
It says he was stubborn, refusing to believe scientific evidence that didn't jive with his beliefs. He refuted black holes, even though his own work led to their discovery. He refused to accept the Big Bang Theory because it contradicted his certainty that the universe is static. And he scoffed at gravitational waves, even though the theories emerged from a paper he wrote himself.
Okay, so people who are experts in the field and know a lot more about Einstein's inner writings, all of us in the general public just, think the theory of relativity, and he pieced things together, but we don't know about the infighting that happened privately or with close colleagues.
And his stubbornness and his closed-mindedness, that's another thing that has been studied, is once you consider yourself an expert, you kind of become closed-minded to other ideas. And that's interesting. That's interesting it's an interesting phenomenon that apparently happens.
Okay, let's look at Edison. When he invented the light bulb, we talked about that before and said 10,000 ways it didn't work. I saw a recent quote that said it was 2,000 ways it didn't work. I'm not sure which one is accurate, if it was just 2,000 tries or 10,000 tries. But 2,000 tries, he became an expert at that, but that is the thing that finally succeeded. I don't know what work went beyond that. I mean, we do have LED lights now, liquid crystal display. There's different things. So it did continue to be worked on, but he stopped as soon as he found that vacuum with the filament he was going to use. And he became the expert and said, this is my business going forward. And it probably succeeded very well for him. So maybe you don't have to go on beyond that if that's your role.
Your calling or purpose in life is to reach this specific...
Get it to that apex.
Right. And then you can stay there, but other people are going to take that and go further with it.
Yeah, and those other people might say, based on that, what he was talking about, Einstein, is that his colleagues said, you're not listening to me about black holes. Why are you so stubborn? You're the one that wrote about it.
Yeah.
Why can't we discuss this? Well, because I don't want to. I'm stubborn.
Because I'm stubborn. Do you think people actually say that?
I would hope so, that if they are going to be stubborn on it, they're just going to be stubborn. That they know that they're not willing to look at another option. And maybe, because he took so long thinking about it, he's not going to entertain a new avenue. He says, I put all this work together and I got to this apex, to this mountaintop, and I've given my theory, and I'm not going to work on that again. I did too much work. It took me too much pain and time to get here. I don't want to go back into a valley and then work again for another 20 years to get that next thing that you're suggesting. You do that. I'm not going to do it.
I'm making a conscious decision not to go further with it.
Yeah, rather than just that you're an expert.
I don't know if that's really what this study was talking about, though, or this article. I think it's the unconscious thing that happens when you consider yourself an expert.
The article may be right, or he may be wrong too.
Yeah, that's true.
And well, a professional, I'm thinking a professional would allow both sides to be true.
That does imply more conscious intention.
We're judging between those three words: authority, professional, and expert, unless there's some other word we want to introduce. But with those, I think the professional would be the one that would allow other ideas. An expert would allow no other ideas. I'm an expert. I'm the expert in the field. And an authority just has the added benefit of having an audience that also supports them, the 10,000 followers or 1 million followers on YouTube that are continuing to follow that line of thought.
Right. So the percentage of experts that are professionals then would be, it's a percentage, not 100%. It's a part of all of the experts are professionals. We probably couldn't really give a hypothetical number to that. 10%. I bet there's a lot of people in the world that think they're an expert at something, but really they're not a professional at it. They're self-proclaimed expert.
That relates to truth. Self-proclaimed, it's what you believe. I think that's related to truth. It's what they know is the truth. And they can claim themselves as expert. I've thought about this for years, and so I know that this is the way it works. This is human psychology.
And once you know the truth, you don't need to investigate any further. That's the end of it.
I learned that when I was a child, and it's still true.
Right. That's why so many people are so upset with the different ways of doing math that kids are being taught these days. They're like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That's not how you do this times that. That's multiplication is supposed to be stacked like I learned when I was a kid. You can't do it any other way.
Like the story of the ham, the family with the ham who always cut the end off the ham. And the daughter asked the mom, I'm telling this story just because.
Because I don't know it. Tell it.
No, you know the story. You'll know it as soon as I say it.
Okay.
The daughter who asked the mom, they were getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner, so she cut the ends off of the ham and put it in the pot and, put it in the roaster in the oven. Says, Mom, why do we cut the ends off the ham? Why do we have the ends? Is it necessary that's open? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out why we do that. And she said, well, I don't know. Grandma always did it. So I said, well, let's ask her. So called up Grandma and say, why do you cut the ends off of the ham? Because I've always done that. I learned it from you. Why do you cut the ends off the ham? She says, well, my pan wasn't big enough for the whole ham.
Huh.
That was the only reason. So there's no reason to cut the ends off, but they did that as a tradition for, an expert opinion of Grandma for 2 generations, just because her pan wasn't big enough.
So placing authority in an expert for one reason might be the wrong reason for the authority then.
Yeah, because Grandma was the authority in that story, and everyone just believed her. We gave her the authority to make that decision. And you liken that to religions and families. Children are raised in a specific religion, and they give their parents the authority of that expert opinion, trusting their testimony and their life experience. And that authority, then you take back yourself. So you can take authority back from an expert at any time, I would suppose, right?
Yes. I think that's when you stop believing that they're an expert anymore, then you've removed the authority that you placed in them.
They may still be mom and dad, but they're no longer the authority of you. You've taken your own authority position.
Yeah. And that's actually been pretty hard for me, removing the authority that you and Mom have had over me. Like, it has occupied my thoughts here and there for how old am I? Almost 40, 20 plus years. For 20 plus years since I've started realizing that perhaps...
Since you started placing your authority position appropriately, the way you felt like doing it. So you're placing your authority position where you feel like it should be.
Right. And not just with religion, of course, like that. That's one major thing that is featured in my relationship with you guys. But
how you do dishes in the house.
Yeah. Doing the laundry and of course, doing the dishes, stacking my dishes in the dishwasher a different way than I was taught when I was a kid. I learned something new about it, and I had to fight but my mom taught me how to do it this other way, though. I had to fight that.
Your tendency, your training, your culture, you had to fight your culture a little bit. This is a good, I want to introduce what I had read about experts in Jordan Peterson's book, and it's about that advice, someone who gets stuck on their own view of life. And he's talked about, it's rule 9, to assume that the person you're listening to might know something you don't. And as a psychologist too, he's using it from that standpoint. So this is in the 12 Rules for Life, his first book. Psychotherapy is not advice, is how he starts it out. Advice is what you get when the person you're talking with about something horrible or complicated wishes you would just shut up and go away.
And so they give you advice.
Yeah, they give you the advice because they already know. They know what's going on with it. And they think in their mind, if you weren't so stupid after all, you wouldn't have had your stupid problems. So the expert knows that you caused it and you're out of it. And then he does go later, he gives an example, but in this example, he says, a lady came to him with a question. He identified 2 different ways he could have answered that. And he said both of those she would have accepted and seen as truth and would have been accurate. But that would have been advice. And he's identifying that a psychotherapist, an actual psychotherapist, shouldn't do that. He said he let her go, well, the next thing, I have learned not to steal my clients' problems from them. So if you give your expert advice, you jump in with all the answers and say, I know these are the answers. You're stealing the problem from them, saying, I'm going to take your problem, I'm going to solve it, and now you just get away from me. It's done. You can leave now. He says, she left therapy with me only somewhat less informed and vague than when she first met me. So in that thing, she's learning a little bit. He said, but at least she didn't leave as the living embodiment of my damned ideology.
Goodness, that guy's a professional.
Right. He's a professional. He knows it. And so a professional psychotherapist is going to do that. He talked about how Sigmund Freud developed his status because he laid people on a couch facing the other way. He didn't want his facial expressions to cause the patient to react any way or another. So he had to get himself completely out of the view.
Right. It's because people do respond to body language. So if he flinched or cringed or anything, then that patient might have said, "Oh, what I just said was uncomfortable for him, so I'm gonna stop talking about that."
The expert can fall into that trap, and that's the trap you kind of identified that they accused Einstein of not listening to any other avenue.
Being closed-minded.
And that's where I think a professional on the other side is going to be open-minded to new ideas and let other people bring their problems or issues or solutions and potentially involve them in the profession that he's working towards, that he's practicing.
Related to that, there's something called the expertise syndrome. I think related to this. So let me let this website pull up. TravisSweissgood.com. It's maybe not an active page, but it's mentioned on Reddit, so that's where I'm getting it from. Let me just double check here. Yeah, his page isn't active. On Reddit from 9 years ago, they're quoting this guy saying from 2008, expertise syndrome is defined in two ways. First way, becoming so skilled in a given topic, methodology, etc., that you can't discuss it with someone who is lesser skilled than yourself, as you leave out significant parts by deeming them common knowledge. You know so much about something that you're not able to talk with anyone about that because you just make it so filled with expert lingo and terms or theories. Like perhaps if you and I talk about something and we just reference synergy, if we just say synergy, people might not know what we're talking about.
A base of understanding for what that is and what it means in our discussions that we've had.
Right. And so is there a way to actually talk about it, include that in our conversations without requiring that any listener of any episode must listen to the previous 40 episodes in order to understand what we're talking about?
What did you call that? That's the expertise syndrome.
Yes.
We could fall into. And with this conversation, knowing that we've been part of the 40 episodes and we're living on that and we're referring back to something that we talked about before, the syndrome would be just say synergy. Yeah, I understand that. Now let's move on to the next topic. But the expert or the professional expert would say synergy, and what we're, just to be clear, well, we had this quote earlier, and I think I can't find it really quick. I think it was Mark Twain who said it's the simplicity beyond complexity that we're looking for. You don't really understand something. I'll have to find the quote. It may not be Mark Twain because it didn't come up really quick. That we talked about that way early in these conversations, you and I. Simplicity beyond complexity. We're trying to find the simple way to say something. And that's the reason we started this in the first place, is we want to take a complex topic like expertism and find a simple way to look at it and think about it and get to do you have a minute? The minute statement of what that is.
So that's important to keep in mind. If you consider yourself an expert in any way, then it's important to know that a lot of what you know is built off of foundational ideas that you had to learn first. You had to learn these things first in order to get to where you're at.
Yeah, the jargon of an industry. But if you don't understand it fully, I think the meaning of that quote is you don't understand it fully unless you can explain it simply. If you have to use the jargon and you have to use all the complex topics and describe it that way, you don't really understand it yet until you can get it back to the simple form. On the other side of learning all of your avenues.
Yeah, one example of that is there's these two videos about a mathematical theoretical problem. It's called Kakia's needle problem, where the idea is let's see if I can explain it in the simplest term. This needle, which is really just this line has to be able to point in any direction in the smallest area possible on a flat, like a two-dimensional space. And so it's got to be able to rotate. And you think, okay, you can spin it in a circle, and that's got to be the smallest space that it needs to be able to go around all of the directions to point in any given direction on this two-dimensional flat surface, right? So I mean, like a needle on the table, right?
What's the quandary?
The area, how small of an area do you actually need to be able to get this needle to be pointed in any infinite number of directions? And so you think a circle, because then it can spin. But you can actually do a triangle, which is a smaller area as a circle than a circle. You can get it to face in any given direction within a triangle. But it's actually much smaller than that, like near zero area is what you actually need for this. But so I'm explaining it in the simplest terms that I can explain it, but there's a couple of videos on YouTube that you can see. One video is an expert at a professor, maybe a professional at Princeton, and he researched this Kakia's needle problem, and now he's trying to explain it in the simplest terms he can think of in this video, but it's still far above my head. It's still not the simplest way you can explain it. And so a less accomplished professor at a less prestigious school saw this video and thought that he could do a better job at explaining it. And it was a bit more simple, but still above my head. It was more understandable, but some of the stuff I still didn't get because I needed some more basic principles before I could really understand that one.
And it seems very simple.
The way I explained it?
The way you explain the problem, what's the smallest area? I just pulled it up. The problem says, what's the smallest area in which a needle can be rotated 360 degrees, which you explained it just fine. Point to anything 360 degrees. But it's obvious. It's just 2 points. If you can make 2 points, 1 point to the next is going to be that needle. So however small you can make 2 points is as small. It does say here infinitesimally small. So to infinity, we've talked about in the past about these proton machines that are in our cells that operate inside of an atom. Proton machine operating inside of an atom is a complex machine. In that size, you can have a needle spinning all the way around.
Right, but the needle has to get smaller and smaller. Like you've got to get a needle versus one that is one set unit of length and find out what the smallest area that fits in. Like if you can't make the needle smaller, then what's the smallest area for that 1 unit of needle?
All right, so if it's a 1-inch needle, you're using a 1-inch needle, what's the smallest area you can have to have it rotate? So if you define, and that may be the problem, so that's the quandary problem. Your needle is a given definite length. For that length of needle, what's the smallest area it can cover to point all directions? And that's where they came up with a triangle, because the needle can slide up and down. On that triangle, it can slide around. It doesn't have to have a central focal point, not necessarily a circle. So that's where you said, if it's a triangle and the needle can slide one corner to the next, and maybe a triangle is the furthest.
But a triangle is not. These videos do illustrate even smaller areas possible, even close to zero, closer to zero than you could believe. So it's amazing. It's a difficult, interesting mathematical problem that one person could explain to a group of professors and they would all understand it, but I would not.
So here's the thing. Are they an authority? What's their audience that they're trying? What problem does it solve that has an audience? That would be the thing maybe it's an expert opinion, but it is an authoritative opinion. Do they have an audience they're trying to, or is it just a problem that's out there? Why does the problem exist? And who was Kaikeya that came up with it?
Yeah, this professor did win a medal for research in this topic, so he is an authority. I think he's an authority in the topic just because other people think he's an authority in the topic, even though I don't understand him.
And it may be that he has an audience. That's right. That's what makes him an authority, is enough people would listen to him. You look at his video, how many views does he have?
This is on the number file.
Okay, so I see
Number
this
file
guy.
YouTube video. He's got 716,000 views from 9 years ago, 10,000 likes.
Yeah, that's a complex problem.
That is, though, just the first definition of expertise syndrome. What else do you have to say about that, though?
Let me just identify that, the simplicity, so it gets more complex if you can't simplify it. It was Oliver Wendell Holmes that said that quote. He says, for the simplicity on this side of complexity, I wouldn't give you a fig. But for the simplicity on the other side of complexity, for that, I would give you anything I have.
What does that mean? That's too complex.
If you can work through the problem, get to the simplicity, simple way to describe it with actual knowledge behind it, that's what is worth everything. And I heard the quote before, I would give my arm for that, but everything I have, anything I have. That quandary, Kaikeya's needle problem, to come to the conclusion of that and simply come to a simple thing. And that's what Einstein apparently did with E equals mc squared, with the theory of relativity, that he came up with a simple solution at the end that seemed to map to a lot of things. And now everyone is complicating that and saying, no, it really doesn't work. And that's why they have string theory. And when we get to the end of string theory, maybe we'll have another simple solution that'll be worth a lot more.
Right. I think that's why mathematics can be fun for so many people, is the potential for new discoveries. We haven't discovered everything there is to discover in math. It's not done yet, you know?
And if you start thinking about it, it causes your intelligence to come into play, or your imagination. Math causes your imagination to have to come into play, especially when you roll into these bigger problems. And, maybe even this Kaikeya's needle problem is one that brings you into upper levels of math, that you have to imagine something else, but it opens your mind.
Yeah, that reminds me of Interstellar, where they were working on this, trying to figure out how to save everyone on Earth, but really not to save everyone on Earth, just to save everyone off of Earth. But this mathematical problem that they just couldn't figure out. And then Murph, the main character at home, she couldn't figure it out either until her dad gave it to her in the form of Morse code or whatever on his watch.
Yeah, and how did he get it to her?
Through the fourth dimension, through the multi-dimensions that his future humanity had given him, because they could just go through time as if it was one space, right?
Yeah, so it's when he entered the black hole, right? He entered the black hole, and that opened a dimension that we didn't know.
Yeah, the dimension of time. But she wasn't going to figure it out without him, without her future self. It's a paradox. Future self wouldn't have been there if it weren't for future self being there. She wasn't going to figure it out until she was given it from future humanity.
Well, and that's a storyline.
Right.
But stories may be true as well.
Anyway, for some reason, that math's new discoveries, that made me think of Interstellar.
Interstellar, they identified where that inspiration came from, or that revelation. So in that show, they said it comes from your future self that you actually followed through, or your dad did. And then you figured out how to read it. And then you told your dad about how to read it. And so he was able to get to that point so he could share it with you. So that's how the story went, I think, right?
Time was all so in one spot, just like we kind of explained in the eternity conversation, right? It was all at once.
That you could touch any part of it you wanted to at any time. But that's just one explanation of how revelation, an expert would say that's the way it happens. Astronomically, we can explain it. We know what black holes now. We know what they do, and they get us into this time dimension. And so now that's the answer, and you can't answer it any other way. Or you have the religious side that says revelation all comes from God. It couldn't be someone that's in a time dimension that's feeding you information. It couldn't be an angel. It has to be God.
Well, and by angel, you mean like yourself
In the future, or yourself in the
in
past.
in that time dimension, right?
Yeah. It's your 5-year-old child doing something in their dream that touches your world right now. And you realize it. And then maybe you look back in your dream book when you were 5, when you were 12, your 12-year-old dream that you wrote about. And then you get some inspiration, and then you notice it in your 12-year-old dream journal. I dreamed that exactly, and that's exactly what I received when I was 45.
Huh.
From myself.
Has that happened to you? Is this a story from your experience?
Not yet, but I bet it could. Yeah, it's not necessarily experienced that way, but I have my dream journals. I probably do that and can make a connection that's legitimately that concise. I bet it would be.
Interesting.
I bet it could be.
If we get an understanding of how that time all at once could work.
But that's the syndrome that you want to get away from, is to say there's only one way this can happen, and it's God. And so there's no other communication in the universe except God demand through revelation.
All right. Can I share with you the second definition of expertise syndrome, which I think is also very important to understand?
We treated the first as being inability to be understood, because you're using words or concepts that can't be understood by common people.
Right. Concepts that you consider are common knowledge. So second definition is when knowledge within a community becomes common knowledge and is no longer discussed, at which point newcomers often find it hard to find basic information. I think common knowledge is the problem of being an expert, is you start to think there's things that are just known about this, and so we don't need to talk about it anymore. So the community issue, I have that issue in my pipe band right now. There's things that it seems like everyone knows about being in our particular organization, that when we get new people in the band, that stuff isn't written down anywhere. We don't have a compendium of knowledge that is accessible by anyone coming in to our group, except for if they realize there's something that they don't know, then they ask about it, and then they can be directed to the right people to get the answers from. But really, most of the answers are things that could be gotten from a document if we just put it down into a document.
I want to relate that to primary answers. You forget the primary answers when you get into the doctrinal answers. That's a religious setting. And you don't want to talk about the primary answers anymore. It's just silly. The fingering, there's got to be, what is the flutter fingering that you do? I call it flutter. What do you call it? What is it actually?
Grace notes and doublings.
Grace notes and doublings. So those things, you start talking doublings, and what dumplings? I don't, what's a doubling? And then you have to explain that.
Yeah. And we say, oh yeah, we just have, that's how we make our music sound good, is we just put doublings all over the place. But then nobody understands what that really means.
And
doublings.
That's more of a simple thing, but I've been thinking for years now, and I haven't figured out how to do it, that I think you should write a piano piece with those grace notes and doublings so that it sounds like a bagpipe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's basically trills. You know what a trill is, right?
Yeah. And is a doubling, but is it the note next to it? Is that how you double, or is it just a flutter of the same note?
Only some are actually like a trill. They jump lines. Many of our doublings jump lines. They're like just our pointers, and that's a doubling. If you just tap both of your pointers in succession, then that's a doubling on.
Is it a triad? Is it 3 notes apart, or how many notes apart is it?
It's not as easy as
not
that.
Mathematical?
It's not. It's
okay.
not mathematically There's a doubling on each note. Each note has its own doubling. And then there's other movements that get even more complicated. There's one movement where you actually lift every finger all the way down in succession. And that's something like really complicated and takes a lot of work to get it to sound right. But there's
to get your muscle memory to work.
7 notes in a row. You have to happen
and it's
all
quickly.
at once. Yes. Like lightning fingers. No, what I was thinking of though is you're saying primary answers before you get into doctrine. I don't think many people know what the primary answers mean. What is that? I mean, you say primary colors, but it's not primary colors. It's the answers that you get in primary level.
In a primary grade, primary level of a religion, or, is a child class, child age class.
Right. So in the LDS community structure, primary happens between the ages of 2 and 12. And we call that primary. So that's anything that you're taught in primary is the primary answers. You can't get any deeper than that because the kids will just glaze over and lose attention.
And there's no reason to get more than that. You're trying to just be simple. Simple stories, the simple idea is a primary idea. Simple, and it's what Oliver Wendell Holmes said, is the simplicity on this side of complexity. So the primary children and primary teachers who are in that thought, they're going to be thinking those simple concepts. They didn't necessarily go through the complex understanding to say, this is why that primary answer works. And they're not explaining the simplicity on the other side of it.
But do they need to?
Not to that status.
Yeah, the teacher's handbook implies that somebody did that and somebody knows the other side of complexity and has distilled it down to the simplest for you. And so all you need to do is read from the handbook.
And there was some authority. So this is what I'm saying. There's some authority that the group has said, this community says there's an authority here that says this is the simplicity we want to teach for primary answers. And then when we get into more doctrinal answers, gospel discussions, seminary type things, or institutes of learning, you're going to learn more. You're going to go through education phase and learn more. And that's still not the doctoral level. Then you can get into the doctoral level of understanding it, the professional side. And there are professions in everything that do think about all those things. That's kind of ties back to the professional. They're the ones that'll look at all the answers and try to make connections that no one else has made before, or from other industries even, and say this connection works in this religious standpoint too. So let's incorporate that. And they'll figure out how to do it and then make it simple. And supposedly that simplicity, if it's determined as truth and authoritative enough that coming from the correct principle source, then it's going to be rolled down to the simplest, to the primary level as well.
That side of complexity.
But if you're operating in this adult organization and you talk about doublings and no one's ever said it before, and I've been here for 6 months and I hear this word doublings all the time, and you've shown me the thing, but what is it?
I think, and that's what an instructor should be doing, is teaching you the lingo of what you're in.
Take someone through the jargon. Yeah, and that's jargon. You need to know that in any industry that you enter, what they call things.
Somebody on this Reddit thread said the biggest hurdle that they have come across for learning software engineering has been running up against an expertise syndrome kind of wall, where he says you find a tool you need, and then the README document says, just do this command, and then you spend the next 3 hours learning the 20 things that need to exist before just do this command actually works.
Yeah, before you can use the command or the routine. I don't know many words about software engineering, but a routine or a command. Command, it can be all kinds of things. I don't know what words I've heard, but there are words that you have to do what she said, 20 steps before you can make it work, that you need to understand.
You need to know what step 0 is and step 1. Like instruction booklets assume assume sometimes a basic understanding of something before you can start with their step one. But I mean, my kid is kind of going through that with a GED math study right now. We're running up against problems where they're like, okay, and now just follow this method. Then they call it a method, and it's just assumed that you know what that is. You have to search everywhere for, wait a minute, what actually is this method? How do we figure this out? You know.
Like the word Pythagorean theorem. I mean, I have that name in my head. It's a theorem. I don't know what it is. I don't know who the Pythagorean, oh, I guess I do. Pythagorean theorem is a way to make a square. It's the hypotenuse of a triangle. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A right triangle. The hypotenuse of a right triangle. It's how to make something actually square. It's to create a right triangle. You take the hypotenuse, square it, and then take your distance on one side and then subtract that from it. And you can then square that to give you the exact distance.
Yes. So when you said square, I thought the square shape, but it's actually the square angle.
A square angle, 90-degree angle, an exact 90-degree angle based on the Pythagorean theorem. But if you just say that, we'll use our Pythagorean theorem. How do we do that?
What does that mean? So experts, if they're not professionals, often just keep things complicated, then, is what that's kind of saying.
They could cause harm to a system. And that's what he said. At least they wouldn't have my damned ideology. Your ideology then goes out, the ideas you have go out into the community, and that becomes the community. And if they are damnable, like he said they were, then it's going to stop everyone else at that idea. It won't allow progression beyond your ideology, because, you know, the band will have that limitation. This is the ideology we operate under. We can't start with our left foot.
No, we always start with your left foot. What are you talking about?
Oh, you can't start with your right foot.
Yes.
You can only start with your left foot.
Yes, you obviously don't know.
Whatever it is, the ideology. Right. I'm not part of the group. Or the twirl. The twirl on your, what is the tenor drum? The twirl has to be inside. You can't twirl from the outside.
Only in certain spots. There was something I recently learned. I thought I was really good at flourishing, is what it's called on the tenor drum.
Flourishing, okay.
I thought I was really good at that until I started taking a fundamentals challenge course about 5 years ago. And the very first things were like movements that are very simple, but I thought nobody ever did because I had never done them. And so I had been telling people, no, you never do an outside forward movement because it just doesn't work. But it was incorporated in this fundamentals course, and now I can do it. And now it's something that I understand people can do. And some people do it. I think the ones that don't consider themselves experts are the ones that do it.
Who can be professional and practice it and actually learn a new mastery level, master something new. And then you get to a point, if you're a professional enough, that you'll invent something that isn't in that course and isn't here, but you say, I've been working on this for 6 months and I think I almost have it. And then 3 years later, you'll get it. And you'll say, now let's train this new thing.
Right. And that's how we got to where we are today in flourishing, because, 20, 30 years ago, it looked nothing like what we're doing now. So it's pretty amazing, the evolution in such a short time,
It's a visual thing more than it is musical. Is that right? That's what I think of it. From the outside.
That's evolving as well.
Does the tenor drum ever even get heard?
Yeah, it used to be that the less you heard tenors, the better it was. Judges would judge on that. They're like, too much tenor here. It's stop playing the drum so much. But now the judges are looking for more music from the tenors.
Appropriate tenor sound.
And so that's an evolution as well. It didn't used to be as musical.
They're saying now we just need more cowbell.
Yes.
Which is a Saturday Night Live reference.
we have 5 tenor drums in our band right now, and all of them are pitched to different notes that are found in the bagpipe scale, actually. And so it does make a difference in who plays at what spot in the music.
And which ones hit at the time. Yeah, that's cool.
Somebody on actually this podcast podcast is called The Archon. I don't know, ARTIA. It's like Martian, but without the M. This guy near Hindi interviewed Ellen Langer, and I looked this up because Ellen Langer wrote the mindfulness book that I'm in the middle of reading right now, and I figured she would have something to say about being an expert, because so far the book is how are people mindless? How do they become mindless? And it's habits and thinking that something is the truth immediately, and then stopping to think about it, like stopping thinking about it. They're done thinking about something once they know that it's the truth. Lots of other things like that. So I imagine being an expert is a lot like that, where you become mindless, not being an authority, not being a professional, right? Expert is the basest level of knowledge. I think we've decided is if you're just an expert, you run the risk of stopping thinking about new ideas. But once if you're a professional, then you're open to more than what you know now, right?
So you aced your test, and now you forget about what you just took the test on because you're done with that level of life, or you got straight A's.
In this interview, though, it's not Ellen that talks about being an expert. It's, well, the quote by the podcast guy himself. He says, often people ask me, oh, you are the experts, or they tell him, I guess. This is in podcast form. It's the transcript, so he's not like typing this out. People say, oh, you're the experts. And I tell them that is the worst curse you can tell me, is that I'm an expert. I don't want to be an expert because I want to know that I don't know. Don't curse me with that title. I'm not an expert. I'm just progressing. I'm learning. I'm getting better at whatever this is. Maybe I'm a little bit further than someone else, but I'm still not an expert at it, you know? So the idea is once you place that expert title on yourself or someone else, then that kind of implies that that's it. That's all there is to know about it, whatever it is that you're an expert in.
That's the syndrome.
Yeah, expertise syndrome.
That was the second thing about the syndrome?
No. In that definition that I gave you from the Reddit post from 2008, it was about common knowledge, thinking there's certain things about common knowledge.
So this is another limitation on expertism, is that you think you already know. It's what you know. And there's this quote, and maybe I could find where it came from, but it's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
Absolutely.
We've talked about that before. It's what you know for sure, what you're an expert on, that just ain't so, that's going to damage you. So if you claim expert status on something and no longer want to be a professional or a practicer in it, but you just want to know that's what it is, then you're going to be damaged by that.
Just by virtue of having the label expert, then that's a limiting label, right?
Yes, it's not open. It says I know already.
You could say professional. Kids, I don't know if it's kids just these days or if they've always been saying it, but like my younger kid is always saying, I'm so pro at this, you know, which means that he's just so good at it. Or like, man, that was really pro, when he sees something online that was like really cool or whatever.
He did play me that one day in one of those video games. And you know how often I play video games, once in a lifetime.
Only when he asks you to do it.
The only time I ever played. And he was just going all over the place. And he said, just push the buttons. I just pushed the buttons as fast as I could. And he tore me up completely. There's no way that I had any chance.
He's so pro,
he was a pro
at that, right? Yeah, I think if they keep using that language, though, I mean, if these younger guys keep using the pro, if they understand that it means knowing that you don't know everything, but you're still working on trying to know everything, then that's better than being expert level.
They're trying to change the definition. The definition I would love to have for professional is that you know how much you don't know, and you're continuing to practice and gain mastery, gain an additional mastery level. And you don't just hit the apex and say, I'm happy on this mountaintop, I'm not going to stop here, what they accused Edison of doing, but that I'm going to continue to practice and I'm going to move to the next mountaintop with you. Let's just keep going.
So that's another label, master. How does that relate to expert or authority or professional? What is a master?
A master of your craft. See, I'm relating the book that I read about it, mastery. But a master of your craft, you're not an expert. So when you're a master, well, the master's golf thing, you watch that.
I see it in my peripheral vision when I walk past where the television is.
Yes, because you have someone in your house that knows what that means as the master's tour or whatever. But I think you have to win a certain amount of things to get included in the master's tour. So it's a mastery. You get to a certain level of mastery, but then they're still not mastering. They know what they don't know still. They know there's things they don't know. They're not the experts at golf. They're just the masters at this time. What was it? I read something just recently about Tiger Woods and how he got to that point. He won the 5 or 4 or something, won all of the titles in 1 year, all the top masters titles, and he held them all. And then at that point, he decided to rework his golf swing because he knew there was something more he could get to. So he went back to the scratch, to the start, started again, and rebuilt his golf swing a different way.
Yeah, that's like hitting reset on your video game. Like you win and you're like, okay, let's see if I can do that different. Lose all my progress so far. We'll start at the beginning.
And I think that's what a master will do. A master will realize, too, that they're a professional in it and that they're willing to learn the next step. They know enough that they know there's things they don't know.
Are masters equal to professionals? Like once you're a professional, then you can be a master, or I mean, not equal, then above and beyond a professional.
I would think it has to do with the audience. A master has a bigger audience than a professional does. A professional is trying to gain an audience. A master would probably have the audience. So the same thing as an authority. A master is a professional with authority.
Yeah. And we're not talking about like thousands or millions or billions of people. We're talking about in that specific community. If you are a master at golf, then all of the golfers will consider you an authority.
Yeah. Well, and each golf course has a professional golfer in it, right? There's always a pro golfer.
I think so. Yeah.
I think I've heard that. He's not necessarily a master, but if he's a master pro golfer, then they might call him a master. This is our master golfer.
What smaller communities have masters in them? Like, that sounds like a familiar term for like master chef, master, Zen master. Is that something?
Yeah, I think I've heard that. Well, you have the master degree. Master's degree is before doctorate, after bachelor's. So it's in the education realm as a master's, but it's not the top of it either. A master is still growing.
Yeah, there's still a doctorate after that, and a second doctorate, and a third doctorate. And even the doctorates that they give you for just being good at what you do, you don't even have to do any in-class studies for it, and you still get a doctorate.
You can receive an honorary degree, because you earned it from life experience.
Master of disguise. How about that guy?
Master of disguise. Yeah. Am I turtly enough for you?
Dana Carvey.
Yeah, that was Dana Carvey's thing.
When he was a master of disguise, the implication was that he could not be recognized as his other self, right?
Yeah. And the joke of it is that you always knew who Dana Carvey was in the whole thing. So that's the joke. But a true master of disguise, I don't know that we have those.
Yeah, that's just let's see, master of, I'm trying to.
You have a master of the arts in about anything. You know, a master chef, a master piano player, a master pianist, master organist, master piper.
We don't call anybody master pipers. They're pros. We call them pros.
Professional. Your most professional piper. Your best one.
Yeah, it's a level of competition in solo piping. You have grade 5 to grade 1, but then after grade 1, you're in the pro level, and that's like open.
That's the top.
Yeah, it's you can't get any better than that. Google is not helpful at all with master versus professional. This is something new that we're exploring here.
Well, maybe there's no difference. I think there should be. I think my proposal for that is the expert opinion we should follow.
Okay, that there should be a difference.
A professional with an audience is a master.
A professional so you can be a professional with no authority, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah. You're practicing, you're still working, but you're not a master because no one's following you yet. You're not teaching anyone. Maybe in tennis, let's say you're a tennis player and you're practicing and you're becoming professional. You're a professional tennis player. You're not a master until someone is learning from you or looking at your example and following it, till you have followers in your craft.
Yeah, because master is also in relation to master versus slave or servant, or like you're in charge of
students,
someone.
Student and master, a master and a student. So if you gain mastery, that means you have students you're teaching.
If you've mastered a subject, then you can't have mastered a subject until you're teaching someone the subject.
And maybe that's also that idea of until you've gotten to the point that you can discuss it simply enough to teach somebody, because that's the simplicity beyond complexity. You can professionally get into the complexity and try to discuss it, and no one will understand you. But until you get to the other side that you're simple, then you can be a master, because then you can talk to people about it and you can bring them along the path because you have the simple ways to describe what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I have bagpipe students, but I don't think that I've mastered bagpipes yet. Does that mean that I maybe shouldn't be teaching yet? I'm not professional level. I'm high enough. I'm good enough that I can teach the basics, but I have one student that I'm nearly ready to pass to someone better than me, because we're at a point where I have almost nothing else to teach him. So I'm a master at beginning bagpipes. But
well, do you have someone that you still learn from?
When I think that I have enough money, I do take lessons, yes.
And are they masters, I guess?
Yeah, they are.
There are places you can go to get that education.
Yeah, there are.
I'm just thinking about my piano addiction. I don't know.
Okay. Your addiction to piano?
It's not really, yeah.
Playing or listening?
It's a pastime. Trying to play. I would benefit by having a master to ask questions of or to teach me. I'm certain I would benefit a lot from having them explain to me things that I'm trying to figure out on my own. But I've done my whole life just trying to figure out on my own. And I don't know what I'm doing.
You don't know what you don't know. That's the thing. That's why you need a master, a mentor, someone to tell you, here's something else you don't know yet. Right.
And do this for a while, and get that skill, get that down. And then music theory, I mean, it's huge. There's so much to know. People go through 16, 20 years of schooling to get to that master level. And I don't have that time, but it'd be nice to know that for sure. Some of it anyway, to know how to use different, I don't even know what they call them.
You have an idea of it, but you have no idea how to express it.
I have an idea. I don't know what the word is. Progressions. You have one chord rolls to the next, and just the circle of fifths. Even to understand that, I've studied the circle of fifths. I've tried to figure it out. I don't know what it does. I've watched some videos on how you can work with it, and it's all of the musical chords, and they relate to each other, and then you can jump from one to the other, and that's what makes music. But I don't know it, and I'd like someone to be able to help me understand it or teach me.
Someone at a master level to be able to teach you, because these videos that you watched tried to explain it, but it just still doesn't. You still don't know it then.
They can give you an example. This is what it does, but they're not. And maybe it's the fact that they're just inside of it. They're there and they said, I know circle of fifths. I'm going to make a video and see if I can get a lot of views. That's what they're there for, is the views, not necessarily to teach.
The idea that whatever they're teaching is common knowledge, like the basics. It's common knowledge. They don't need to go over that.
And it wouldn't be a good video if they did go over that. It wouldn't be a 20-second thing anymore.
Right. They'd have to make a whole playlist, and then they'd have to find someone that's willing to sit through the whole playlist.
To watch the whole playlist, yeah.
But if you wanted to do that, you would have just gone to college for music.
Right. And that was one of those turnings that didn't happen, because I had that thought to go to college for music. I even applied to go to college for music, but I wasn't selected. Since I wasn't selected for the scholarship, I just dropped it all the way. Just like military service, I thought military service, but I wasn't accepted for the program I thought I wanted to go to, so I dropped that and I went a different direction.
Yeah, you didn't take the second best option. It's either this or nothing, and then that's it.
I gained expertise in the things, or professional status in the things that I was invited to, I suppose, did it. And maybe that's what you talked about, authority. You've got to have someone that's willing to accept you into that or invite you into that.
Yeah, to consider that you are an authority. You can't be an authority if you have no one saying you're an authority, right?
Yeah, well, or to say that you could potentially be an authority here. I mean, and someone that closes the door, you say you have a thought that maybe I would want to be an expert or an authority in this field. If they close the door on it really quick, saying, no, I don't, we're not going to be your audience. So we trainers, we masters in the craft are not going to be your audience to help train you, I guess. So you're not allowed. We're not going to invite you. And if you really want to go, you do it without us. And you have that all the time, people that are walk-ons on sports teams that were not invited, but they just say, I want to practice with you. And then some of them become the professionals and the stellar performers on the team. Movies that are written about things like that. The walk-ons that were nobodies, and then they became somebody because they decided that that's what they wanted to do. They practiced it enough to be a professional, to gain expertise, to become a master, and then go on to be very successful in that craft.
Who do we know that is like that? Who do you know of? Not necessarily that we know them personally, but
Steve Kerr is the name I'm thinking of, from the Arizona Wildcats in the 70s and 80s. When I was there at school and he was there, I think we probably exchanged words once or twice at breakfast, but he, regardless of that, he went on and he's got 6 NBA rings, but he was a walk-on. His dad played ball, but he wasn't invited onto the team as a college player, but he walked on and he became the main point guard for the last 2 years of his college career. So he was good. Sean Elliott in the same team was the one that was recruited and was the basketball player. Steve Kerr wasn't necessarily, but he became a 3-point shooter. That's when the 3-point started becoming famous and important in the game. And he just excelled at that. He gained his mastery at that. And then went on to play with the Chicago Bulls, and he actually was part of the team. He was with Michael Jordan. And then he's coached other teams, and his whole career has been basketball. Very successful, but he wasn't invited first. He wasn't given a scholarship. He wasn't sought after in the first 2 years. It took that time for him to develop it. And I'm sure he continued to grow his whole career. It wasn't something that he just said, now I know it, I'm good.
And that's it.
I'm sure he practiced continuously. Individually, do we know anyone individually that'd be...
I mean, personally is what you're saying?
Personally, yeah. Personally, in our circle of knowledge, of influence. Within our circle of influence, who is the best one that has taken a topic and excelled at it? Besides us, of course. We are the best experts we could know of. We have a couple of contractors in our family.
Construction contractors.
I think they're excelling, and some may be excelling more than others, but they're continuing to learn their practice of construction.
I was thinking of, that's a good example, because it wasn't like anybody, well, I mean, kind of. So the older one started working as a summer job in construction, right? And then he's now top level in the company. But the only reason the other ones are in construction is because he was in construction, right?
Maybe. And they all kind of followed him. They all kind of followed him into that.
So an example I know of is my oldest kid is pretty good at making like cosplay things out of just whatever, just things.
Costume construction.
Yeah, and not like Halloween costumes. It's like becoming a master of disguise. She's a master of disguise, okay? She could put on an outfit and look like a completely different person. And it's not just makeup or anything, it's all the accessories and sewing the clothing together and building shapes with foam for a head, a new head, completely new head. And it's really, I didn't teach her that. It's not me or anyone in the family. I don't think she has any friends that specifically do that either. She just found that herself and started doing it. And now she's actually made a little bit of money off of it, but she hated that process working for someone else doing it. And she's probably not ever going to do that again. She just does it for herself.
So something that took imagination.
Oh yeah, lots of imagination and visualizing how something is going to look after you cut it up. Anyway, those are masters. Becoming masters of something, you don't need to be invited to become a master of something. You need to be invited to become an authority on something. So that means the authority and the master aren't equitable.
No, I may still disagree with you on that because I don't think you can become a master on your own. The master has to have a following. So that's the way I would describe it.
The master must have a student, is what you're saying.
Matt, you can be a professional. You can be a professional, gain professionalism at something by practicing enough. But when you gain mastery in it, the thing that identifies you as having mastery is that other people are asking you questions. You are gaining students, gaining followers, or gaining questions in regard to what you're doing. If you're just a professional, then you're a professional chef. You're cooking food and the restaurant's successful and you're making money and you're a professional chef. But the master chef is the one that other chefs are saying, how are you doing that? That's just amazing. Show me what you just did. The professional chef is just doing his job, maybe. Master chef's he's changing the world, doing something bigger than just his restaurant.
It feels like it's a feeling. I mean, there's no check boxes really, right? You can't check box your way to being a master. It falls into place in your progression of education.
It's magic. Yeah.
It's magic.
It's like magic that happens. I just had a discussion with a gentleman this week who was a mechanic, auto mechanic, and a motorcycle and working as a farmer. And so he's got some time. And when the farming isn't going, he's building his automobile maintenance practice. He's got a number of clients. And so I suggested to him, I said, well, you need to be better. And I didn't use the word mastery because that wasn't part of our conversation. But I did kind of say, if you get to be the most pristine, the highest valued auto mechanic in the area, and then that reputation spreads, you're going to be as busy as you need to be. And then you can select your jobs and they can charge more, but you need to have something that stands you out. So I recommended him to read the E-Myth Revisited book by Michael Gerber that just talks about how you build a business and how you operate it as a business instead of as a technician, as a manage the business as opposed to just being a technician in the practice. So anyone can be an auto mechanic. A professional auto mechanic can be a professional auto mechanic, but a master mechanic the world is going to turn to him. I mean, you'll get that extra effort. People will be asking you how you do that. And just one thing I mentioned to him, and I've seen it only a time or two, is someone who is working on an engine and then they'll paint it. When they finished it, they'll clean it off spotless, and then they'll paint the things that can be painted. And I said, maybe you take that class that's set. Instead of just giving them back their old dirty engine, at least clean it perfectly. And if there's things that could be painted, maybe you do put that as part of your practice, and they know they're going to get a new engine from you when you finished it. Yeah, it'll look new. It'll be brand new, and paint will bake on the right way and everything. So I said that may be something to look at as a signature step.
Yeah, an extra thing, you don't charge them for that. That would be just this is what sets me apart from that other guy down the street.
Yeah, it's the differentiation. I'm not just going to do your tune-up. I'm going to paint or whatever, whatever you're working on. Maybe I'm going to make it whatever you can do. Say it's going to take me an hour longer to do this, but it's an hour worth it because it knock your socks off service. It gives them more than what they paid for, and they'll really appreciate it.
Right. Yeah. That reminds me of the vacuum video that I was watching. Is the guy kept saying, this part doesn't really need cleaned, but since you're cleaning the vacuum, may as well just do it right, do it all. Since you're taking it apart, just take this off too and clean it off.
I did that with a vacuum recently. I think I might have mentioned it to you that it was plugged with sticks and stuff. I mean, it didn't have suction.
Oh yeah, like at the car wash places, right? Where it just won't suck up anything from your rug, and you look in it and you're like, wait a minute, there's like baby wipes in here. What?
Who decided to suck this stuff up? Yeah, but I just took the thing apart. Everything I could see, I could take apart. I didn't watch a video to take it apart. I just took it apart, and everything came apart easy enough, and I could see where the suction was and where there was a whole probably 2 inches of sticks and dirt and leaves and all kinds of things that weren't allowing suction to happen.
Right. It kind of sounded a little bit like you were saying there that the work that I did on my vacuum was unnecessary. Like I could have just knocked out the canister and been fine. I didn't have to take it apart very far.
I just didn't look at a video to say, how do you take this model vacuum apart? I just started undoing it and then figured out how to do it back together. But I did have to take the whole hose assembly inside of the motor off of it. But it was just the hose. I didn't fix anything motor or the pulleys. What is it?
The
rubber
clutch
thing?
and the belt. Yeah.
The belt. Yeah, I didn't change anything else. I just checked the airflow.
I would say, I would almost say that I'm an expert at my vacuum now, but maybe there's more to know about it than, I don't know how to fix the motor if it goes, so I'm not quite an expert. I can't say that I'm at the end of my education with my particular vacuum, but we've had this vacuum since 2012, and I think there have been a couple of issues with it that perhaps somebody would have said, I give up, I'm just getting a new vacuum, like that I have been able to fix. So that's something, right?
It's useful. Like sewing machines. Your mother happens to be a professional sewing machine person. She can fix almost anything in it. And she's taken them apart and oiled them and put them back together, and they work. But she's not a master at it because there's still things that will happen that she takes it to the masters to get done.
She hasn't started teaching anyone else how to repair their sewing machines yet.
And she hasn't taken on the practice of learning the full mechanics, but she does know enough. She could take it apart, open up the case, and knows what it's supposed to look like inside, and then can put it back together.
Yeah, she knows where her knowledge ends, right? I think maybe an expert doesn't know where their knowledge ends. They just think they know everything. There's no end to what they know about whatever they're an expert in. But she knows when she doesn't know something and needs someone else's help, then.
Yeah, and she knows where to look for it too. So she can find that. As far as being a seamstress and a craftsman on clothing, she can do anything, I would guess. She's not going to fall to the status of making costumes.
Okay, fall to
that would be a falling from where she currently, her expert status is at. Yeah. So
yeah, she's made wedding dresses, and I think that's the top of the line of things that you could make, right?
Yeah.
Wedding dresses and ball gowns.
She could make a formal gown for a few $1,000s, and that's, you don't want to step back and make a $200 costume.
Yeah, no, the costumes run like a couple thousand.
Yeah. Maybe she would. And actually, she is frankly working on a dancing outfit. It's a dancing costume for a lady that two other seamstresses said they couldn't do it. So she's trying to do the impossible and get this thing done. And she thinks she can do it. And I bet she'll get it done if she hasn't finished it already. So just an interesting type fabric and something that they wanted done with it. And she says, okay, let's work it through.
Okay, so a professional would be a problem solver too, looking for ways that they can do something, even if they don't know how to do it right away.
An expert might say that can't be done. And that's probably what that dancer got back from the other two people. That can't be done. It's just not going to work. I'm an expert and you can't do that. But a professional would say, it's an interesting question and I've got some ideas. Let's see if we can make it work. So the professional will work on the problem and try to solve it. Where the expert will say, it's outside the expertise of this. You can't be done.
Okay. Let me just review my lists here. I think we have touched on everything that I had thought maybe we could talk about regarding experts.
Okay. And I think that we ordered them into a structure, a ziggurat, a pyramid of sorts, where you start as an expert, you start wanting to be an expert, and then you can be invited to be an authority, or you can take that expert status and create a profession out of it. And then I think you get to be invited to be a master of it.
Right. And you can't be a master unless you can simplify it enough on the other side of complexity.
Yeah. So that you have people making you an authority as a professional. A professional authority then would be a master of that craft. And that's just the way I'm thinking of it now. I would order it that way.
Right. Would you say you're a master or even a professional at anything? Like what are you considering yourself to be? What's the most professional thing that you have?
Well, I have a career, and my career is a professional career. Term myself professional. There are experts in the field, so I wouldn't call myself an expert because I'm not done. I do continue to learn, so that's why I framed it as professional. The field I'm in is in finance, and Dave Ramsey is one of the big names in finance in the world. He's an expert, and he has the ways things need to happen. I don't know that he's a professional, and I don't know that he needs to be.
What about a master?
He's a master at his expertise. So, yeah, because he has a following, and there's a great following with him, but he's not trying to change his system. It's that problem he came up with Einstein in the first place. He's not going to change his system. The 7 baby steps are the 7 baby steps. That's it. And the whole world revolves around this apex that he's standing on. And he can't do anything but change that. It doesn't need to, really. That's going to provide his career and his daughter's career, and the whole company is going to continue to grow based on that with the audience he has, because he's an authority. He's an expert authority. But he does, in that profession, so there's professionals. There's people he calls SmartVestor pros that are in the investment world behind it. And then he's got professionals in the other areas of people he talks about. But those professionals are someone who's willing to take the problem beyond that basic expertise level to a professional level.
Beyond the 7 baby steps that he has.
Right. And he realizes that each individual has different problems that happen that the baby steps by themselves can't treat in mass. So you've got to deal with them individually, and it takes a professional to do that individually. And so that's where I sit right now. I don't know that I'd be a master, but I'm in the professional realm that I can look at their issues. And just like I talked about that auto mechanic, that was professional advising to him on things he could look at, potentially giving them more information than they had. But I was displaying my ideology to him too. So this is what I was thinking. It may not be what he actually rolls to, but I need to be open to that and let them keep their problem of building their own business, but give them suggestions. And as a master, I guess the mastery would be when I receive enough referrals that I'm as busy as I can be, or when I finally write a book or something. I don't know. I don't know what a master of financial would be.
You just need to start painting the engines, okay? Like,
yeah, whatever that would be. I got to do the extra, and I think I'm doing that. I've done different things. I did. Yeah, we'll see. My business may advance recently put up a website. So I've got a website that I didn't have before. And that's another addition.
Well, unfortunately, getting a website finally is just bringing yourself up to the lowest level of all of the masters. Like you need to do more than that.
Right. I need to see what the masters are doing.
You're still catching up.
I have gotten good over the last year of summarizing emails. So my communications are improving. And so that's the profession I'm working on, improving communication and improving visibility. That's what a website does, is allow visibility. And there's going to be steps beyond that I'm still practicing getting into. So yeah, I believe I'm a professional, but not necessarily a master. No one's called me a master.
Well, you've got a few years left. You could still reach that point.
Yeah, I'll reach mastery at some point. And I don't know if I would want to. I mean, I teach all the time. And I'd love to, if people ask me questions, to let them know how this was developed and what the simplicity is here on this side of all that complex market stuff that you see the talking heads discussing on the television.
Oh, right. Yeah. Not everybody wants to know what goes on inside the sausage factory.
Yeah, right. So you say, here's the chemical component of the end product and how it got there, how that chemical got in. You don't want to know, but
you don't want to know.
This is the product of the end part,
came from,
and it's this nutritional.
At least it tastes good because of all of the salt and spices we put into it.
Yeah, and don't ask us where the salt came from, but the salt is important. It was natural. I guarantee it was natural.
Natural salt. Maybe bleached so it's white, but I don't know. I would consider myself, I mean, I've frequently said I'm a jack of all trades, a master of none. And I wonder I think that's a perfectly fine place to be. Like, if I am comfortable doing a lot of different things, but I'm not a professional at anything, you know?
And do you want to be? You're not a professional bagpipist?
No.
You're teaching. You're earning some funds from it.
Right. As far as my playing ability goes, I'm the next up from the lowest playing ability. I've got 3 more levels of better that I can get before I'm considered a pro. And I'm not interested in that. I'm not. I'm happy with being mediocre, you know?
Okay. Being a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I am happy with that.
Being average in that. Operable in the trade as opposed to master. Because it takes 10,000 hours to master it.
Yeah. Ain't nobody got time for that. Oh. Some people have time for that, but not me, because I've got too many other things that I want to be a little bit good at.
Too many other avenues in life to occupy your time.
Yeah, I want to learn calligraphy. I want to write a book that maybe doesn't sell any copies. I want to make my front yard look good. And I can't do all of those and also be a pro bagpiper. I have to choose. If I'm going to choose one, I have to choose one. I don't want to choose one. I want to choose all of them.
You're going to choose all of them. Spend a little bit of time on a lot of things. That's the jack of all trades and master of none. You're not going to spend the appropriate or the required amount of time on one to become a master.
Yeah. So I do have 10,000 hours to spend. I'm just going to split it over 10,000 things.
Yeah, right. And if not 10,000, at least 7 things or 24.
At least.
There'll be a number.
Yeah.
A number of things.
Translatable at all to your deck of cards of a bunch of things that you're prioritizing, your values or whatever you were talking about?
Right. It's the things you can do. And I had 98 things that I do in my life. So there's 98 things that I could dedicate my time to in my efforts and the correct principles. So it depends on where you put your profession. I am spending 10,000 hours on the profession that I've chosen because I'm in a role to do that. And chances are your husband is also the same thing. He's going to dedicate the time for the profession that he's chosen.
Does the 8 hours of full-time work count in that 10,000 hours, or does it have to be dedicated improvement?
I think it is the same thing. I think it's the same thing. If you're actually improving during your 8 hours, if you're spending your 8 hours flipping burgers just because that's the way it is, you're never going to be a restaurateur. So, but if you're practicing chefdom, well, they have those videos, those ads about the people looking at a new language, bailar, and then he throws his hand up, and so it's about the language learning model. I don't know which one it is, but where you're learning a language and you become an expert in it. The chef that starts learning French, and so then she starts, her diner restaurant becomes a high class establishment because she's using her 8 hours to improve something and to grow, to actually grow. But the person just flipping the burgers and making them the same all the time and not thinking isn't going to create the 10,000 hours.
Because they're an expert at flipping burgers, and that's all they need.
Yeah, they're there. They've met it. I'm making my $24 an hour because I can flip them $24 worth, and that's all I need. 30,000 a year is all I need. I'm going to be happy for the next 40 years.
Okay, so the moral of this conversation is don't be an expert. Reach for mastery if you want to, right?
Yeah, or at least be a professional. Roll it to the professional side. As an expert, you could be an authority, but you get to choose whether you're a professional or not.
Yeah, because expert implies end of the line. Professional implies continuous growth.
And then if you're ever invited to mastery, that'll be just fine. And you can choose to accept it or not. Say, yeah, you've invited me to mastery. I'm not going to talk anymore about it, though.
Yeah, that would be really hard to do because at that point you've put in all of the time to become a professional, and then they invite you.
You'd switch from professional to an expert at the time and say, no, I'm done. But that's what they kind of accused Einstein of doing at the time was, I did all my work. Now I'm done. I'm not going to talk about your theories off of my theories. You guys work on that. So he turned back into an expert. And that's what they accused him of, is he turned into an expert and sealed off the top. Didn't continue in his professionalism of looking for the next problem to solve and being energized by going for that next mastery level.
Okay. Experts are bad. Experts are bad. Professionals are good. Just kidding.
Did that answer the question that was asked in the first place? Experts.
Yeah, what he had asked was, how does somebody become an expert? What makes someone an expert? But I think really he was asking what makes someone a professional or a master, because expert is nothing to reach for. You don't want that. I think expert was the label he was using that means professional or master,
Yeah, you use that label. The expert, and that brings it to the first thing that came to mind. It's a has-been drip under pressure. So a spurt. Has-been drip under. A drip under pressure is a spurt, and that's all it's going to be. It's just one drip. It has one shining moment. It's like a firecracker. Pop, and it's done. So that's the spurt. An expert is that it happened already. So the expert is someone who used to know something or did something once, and now they think they're the expert, but they're not advancing. They're not professionally advancing any further. So that's the has-been drip under pressure. It did something once, but that doesn't mean it knows anything now.
Absolutely. Okay. That's a neat analogy that I had never heard of. So thank you for sharing.
Sure. That's a good analogy, I think. So the expert isn't something you look for. You want to look for a professional or a master. And that is, since I mentioned Dave Ramsey and he's a public figure, and I said he's an expert in that field, you don't really want to look to Dave Ramsey for your growth continuously. You need to have a professional to advise. And that's what he recommends too. He says, we're not your advisor. We're not doing financial advice. We're doing education entertainment here. And that's what their role is. And he fully realizes that as that expert. So he has to push you onto a professional if you want to advance in what you're looking to do. So I think that's understood on his side too.
Am I remembering correctly that about 5 years ago, everyone was urged to trust the experts regarding COVID? Was that thing that everyone was saying?
Trust the
experts?
science.
Trust the science?
Yeah, the experts, they might have used the word expert, but trust the science. I remember them saying that. The science is here. But the science wasn't there. And that's what's been proven now is the science was fabricated. So yeah, the experts create science that you're supposed to trust. And we are going to have a discussion. I mean, that brings up an appropriate conversation in relation to this, is we're going to have a conversation in the next few weeks or coming up on trust, what that is. So trust the experts. We're admonished at times. What does that actually mean, and how can you do it if you know that expert isn't what you want to look for? Can you trust the professionals? We're going to delve into trust that way.
Yeah. Who can you trust? What is trust? Yeah.
What is trust? How do you build it? And how do you correctly place it? That's going to be what hopefully we discuss.
Oh, very good. Okay. Well, I'll wrap it up. This has been another conversation between me and my dad. I think we're on episode 42. I think that's what this one is. Can you even imagine 42 whole podcast episodes when they said statistically 80% of podcasts end after, like, before they get to the 8th episode. I'm impressed with us.
and we're still energized by it. It's not something that's dying.
We haven't run out of anything to talk about. Great times. So we're posting all of our episodes up on the podcast networks and on YouTube, and we have a blog website, doyouhaveaminutepodcast.com, where we put the full text of our transcripts, so it's fully searchable. Every word we speak, as far as AI can get it right, is there.
We make the corrections where we find them.
Right. Yeah. We're not trusting it completely, but there is a lot of trust that we're placing in AI right now.
In making that transcript. Because I'm not going to type it out. I typed a transcript once. It took hours.
Good typing practice, though, right?
Yes, it was fine for typing practice.
Yeah. So follow us wherever you feel like following us. If there's somewhere that you want to follow us that we're not, you should let us know so that we can get on that particular service. I think that would be pretty important to be widely available, more widely than we are currently. And of course, leave us some comments about anything that you want to talk about or say. Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, is that everything that I need to say? That's the question. I think it covers most of everything. So we're good. All right. Until next time, you have a good night.
Good night.